The ad was simple enough, tucked away in the back pages of the local rag, almost an afterthought. Security guard needed, overnight shift, remote location, good pay. I was desperate. Bills were piling up, and my last gig had ended with a less than amicable parting of ways. So I called the number, a sense of unease already prickling at the back of my neck. The voice on the other end was gravelly, laconic. Jobs at Blackwood Asylum, abandoned 20 years back. Easy money if you don't mind the quiet. Blackwood. Even the name sent a shiver down my spine. Everyone in town knew about Blackwood. Whispers of inhumane treatments, disappearances, and the chilling screams that supposedly echoed from its decaying walls, even now. But good pay, he'd said, and desperation, as they say, is a powerful motivator. I took the job. My first night, the rain was coming down in sheets, a cold, insistent drumming against the windshield of my beat-up truck. Blackwood Asylum loomed out of the darkness, a monstrous silhouette against the bruised sky. It was a sprawling complex of grim, Gothic architecture, all broken windows like vacant eyes, and crumbling stone that seemed to weep with age. A rusted iron gate, half off its hinges, groaned in the wind, a mournful welcome. The old man, Silas, who was finishing his shift, was a wiry, stoic type with an eyes that had seen too much. He gave me the bare-bones tour, his flashlight beam cutting through the oppressive gloom of the entrance hall. Dust motes danced in the light, thick as fog. The air was heavy, stale, smelling of decay, mildew, and something else, something indescribably foul, like old blood and despair. "Your post is the main entrance inside," Silas rasped, his voice barely above a whisper. "Just keep an eye on things. Report anything unusual." He paused, his gaze fixed on a shadowy archway leading deeper into the asylum. "Don't go wandering, especially not into the west wing. That's where they kept the bad ones." A chill that had nothing to do with the damp air traced its way down my spine. "The bad ones?" Silas just grunted, shaking his head. "Just don't go there, son. Trust me." He handed me a heavy ring of keys, a cheap flashlight, and a worn-out two-way radio that crackled with static. "See you in the morning. Good luck." And with that, he was gone, his footsteps echoing away into the storm, leaving me utterly alone. The silence that descended after Silas's truck disappeared was not an empty one. It was a living, breathing thing, filled with the groans of the old building, the whisper of the wind through broken panes, and something else, something subtle, almost imperceptible, like faint sighs and distant rustling. I tried to dismiss it, telling myself it was just the building settling, or my imagination playing tricks. My post was a small, dusty office just inside the main entrance. A single, flickering fluorescent light hummed overhead, casting a sickly yellow glow on the peeling wallpaper and faded portraits of long-dead administrators. I settled into the creaky chair, my hand instinctively going to the small, cheap revolver I kept tucked into my belt. Not that it would do much good against whatever ghosts might haunt this place. The first few hours passed in an agonizing crawl. Every creak, every groan of the old building made me jump. I kept checking my watch, the seconds ticking by with an almost malicious slowness. The air grew colder, even though it was summer. I could feel the pervasive dampness seeping into my bones. Around 2 a.m., I heard it. A faint, almost imperceptible scraping sound from the corridor leading to the west wing. My heart hammered against my ribs. I told myself it was rats, or a branch scratching against a window. But the sound was too rhythmic, too deliberate. Scrape, 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 like something being dragged. I grabbed my flashlight, its beam a weak spear against the encroaching darkness. Hello? My voice sounded ridiculously small, swallowed by the vast emptiness of the asylum. The scraping stopped. Absolute silence. I held my breath, listening, straining my ears. Nothing. I sat back down, my hands trembling slightly. Just my imagination. Just my overactive imagination, fueled by local legends and the inherent creepiness of the place. Then, a low, guttural moan echoed from somewhere upstairs. It was faint, barely audible, but unmistakably human. It sent a jolt of pure terror through me. My blood ran cold. This wasn't the wind. This wasn't the building settling. I stood up slowly, my eyes fixed on the ceiling. The moan came again, a little louder this time, filled with an ancient, unbearable sorrow. It seemed to come from the upper floors, perhaps the dreaded West Wing, where Silas had warned me not to go. My logical mind screamed at me to stay put, to call for backup, to do anything but investigate. But a morbid curiosity, a perverse fascination with the unknown, pulled me forward. I had to know. I had to. I gripped my flashlight tightly and pushed open the heavy wooden door that led to the main hall. The darkness beyond was absolute, impenetrable, swallowing the meager light from the office. The air grew even colder, thick with an almost palpable sense of dread. As I stepped into the hall, a chill swept over me, raising goosebumps on my arms. The moan sounded again, closer this time, a long, drawn-out wail of despair. It was coming from the staircase at the far end of the hall. My flashlight beam danced through the gloom, illuminating crumbling plaster, faded murals, and rows of locked doors, each one a testament to the lives once confined within these walls. The silence was punctuated only by my own ragged breathing and the distant, mournful cry. I approached the grand staircase, its banister rotted and splintered, its steps groaning under my weight. With every step, the air grew heavier, the cold more intense. The moans seemed to envelop me, whispering directly into my ears, a symphony of suffering. On the second floor, the moans intensified, leading me down a long, narrow corridor. The air here was even fouler, a cloying stench of decay and something else, something sweet and sickly, like rotten flowers. I passed rows of cells, their doors ajar, revealing empty, dust-filled rooms. Each cell felt like a gaping maw, ready to swallow me whole. The moaning was coming from the very end of the corridor. As I drew closer, a faint, flickering light became visible under the last door. My heart pounded so hard, I thought it would burst from my chest. What kind of light? There was no electricity in this part of the building. I reached the door, my hand hovering over the cold, rusted handle. The moaning was now a continuous, low keen, accompanied by a soft, rhythmic thumping. Thump, 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 like a heartbeat or something dragging itself across the floor. Taking a deep breath that tasted of dust and fear, I pushed the door open. The scene that greeted me froze the blood in my veins. The room was small, a padded cell, judging by the torn, stained remnants on the walls. In the center of the room, illuminated by a faint, phosphorescent glow that seemed to emanate from nowhere and everywhere at once, was a figure. It was a woman, or what was left of one. Her hair was long and matted, obscuring most of her face, but I could make out skeletal hands pressed against her temples. She was rocking back and forth, her body swaying in a macabre dance, her head hitting the wall with each backward sway. Thump, 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 thump. The moaning was coming from her, a continuous soul-wrenching sound. Her clothing was nothing but tattered rags, blending with the grime of the room. But it was her eyes that truly terrified me. As she rocked, her head finally tilted back enough for me to see them. They were wide, milky white, completely devoid of pupils, and filled with an ancient, bottomless despair. They stared straight through me, unseeing, yet somehow all-knowing. I stumbled backward, a gasp caught in my throat. My flashlight clattered to the floor, plunging the room back into near darkness, leaving only the sickening glow around the rocking figure. The thumping stopped, the moaning stopped, and then she slowly, agonizingly slowly, turned her head towards me, those blind white eyes fixed on my exact location, even in the darkness. A faint, almost imperceptible smile, thin and cruel, stretched across her lips, revealing teeth that were too long, too sharp. A whisper, dry as dead leaves, scraped its way out of her throat. "You stayed." Pure, unadulterated terror seized me. I scrambled backward, tripping over my own feet, desperate to get away. I didn't know if she was a ghost, a hallucination, or something far worse. All I knew was that I had to escape. I somehow managed to regain my footing and sprinted out of the room, not daring to look back. Her whisper echoed in my ears, chasing me down the dark corridor. "You stayed." I stumbled down the grand staircase, my legs like jelly, fear a cold knot in my stomach. I burst back into the main hall, gasping for breath, my lungs burning. The flickering fluorescent light of the office seemed like a beacon of sanity in this nightmare. I slammed the office door shut behind me, fumbling with the lock with shaking hands. I leaned against the door, panting, trying to calm my racing heart. It wasn't my imagination. The patients hadn't left. I spent the rest of the night huddled in that office, the revolver clutched in my hand, staring at the door, expecting it to burst open at any moment. Every creak, every shadow made me jump. I could still hear her whisper, her chilling smile. When the first rays of dawn finally pierced through the grimy windows, painting the dust-filled air with a sickly, ethereal light, I practically ran to meet Silas. He arrived, his face impassive as always, but his eyes seemed to linger on my pale, drawn face. "Rough night, son?" he asked, his voice low. I could only nod, unable to speak. The words were stuck in my throat, choked by the terror of the night. Silas just grunted. "Told you not to go wandering." He paused, his gaze drifting towards the dark maw of the main hall. Some things are best left undisturbed. I didn't argue. I just wanted out. I wanted to be anywhere but Blackwood Asylum. I went home, but Blackwood came with me. The whispers followed me into my dreams. The image of those milky white eyes, that cruel smile, was burned into my mind. I saw her rocking, eternally rocking, her head thumping against the wall, even when I closed my eyes. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. Every shadow in my apartment seemed to lengthen, to twist into grotesque shapes. Every creak of my floorboards became a scraping sound, every distant siren a mournful moan. I was constantly on edge, jumping at the slightest sound, convinced she was coming for me. The next night, I forced myself to go back. I needed the money, and in a twisted way, a part of me felt compelled to return, like a moth to a deadly flame. I told myself it was just a trick of the light, a hallucination brought on by exhaustion and the unsettling atmosphere. I tried to rationalize it, to find a logical explanation for what I had seen. But as soon as I stepped inside Blackwood, the cold, stale air wrapped around me like a shroud. And I knew. There was no rational explanation. This time, I stayed in the office, my back pressed against the wall, my eyes glued to the door. I wouldn't leave, not for anything. I wouldn't go looking for trouble. But trouble, it seemed, had a way of finding me. Around midnight, a rhythmic scratching started at the door to the office. Scratch, scratch, scratch. It was faint at first, then grew steadily louder, more insistent. It sounded like fingernails dragging across wood, long and sharp. I gripped my revolver, my knuckles white. "Who's there?" I croaked, my voice trembling. The scratching stopped. Then a low chuckle, dry and raspy, emanated from the other side of the door. It wasn't the woman's whisper. This was deeper, more guttural, laced with a disturbing glee. "Playing hide and seek, little guard?" The voice rasped. It sounded like it was coming from multiple throats at once, a discordant chorus of ancient suffering. "You can't hide from us. We're everywhere." My blood ran cold. Us, not just one. Suddenly, a loud thump hit the door, rattling it in its frame. Then another and another, growing in intensity. It sounded like something heavy was throwing itself against the door again and again, trying to break through. The wood began to splinter around the hinges. I scrambled back, pulling a heavy filing cabinet in front of the door, though I knew it was futile. Whatever was out there, it wasn't human, and it wanted in. The thumping ceased, a moment of terrifying silence, broken only by my own ragged breathing. Then, a faint scratching began again, this time from the window high above me. I looked up to see a dark silhouette against the moonlight, its face pressed against the pane, grotesque and distorted. 2 pinpricks of red light glowed in the darkness where its eyes should be. I screamed, a raw, desperate sound, and fired my revolver blindly at the window. The bullet shattered the glass, sending shards raining down, but the silhouette remained unmoving. The red eyes seemed to glow brighter, filled with an otherworldly hunger. I emptied the chamber, bullet after bullet tearing into the empty air where the figure had been, but it was useless. It was gone. The rest of that night was a blur of heightened paranoia and overwhelming dread. Every shadow seemed to hold a lurking presence. Every distant sound was a whisper, a moan, a chilling chuckle. I saw fleeting glimpses of figures in the periphery of my vision, just at the edge of the darkness, only to disappear when I turned to face them. When Silas arrived the next morning, he found me slumped against the filing cabinet, my eyes wide and bloodshot, my body trembling uncontrollably. The shattered window was testament to my terror. He didn't ask questions. He just looked at me with those knowing eyes, a flicker of something akin to pity in their depths. "Don't think this job's for you, son." He was right. I couldn't do it. I couldn't spend another night in that place. I walked away from Blackwood Asylum that morning, leaving the good pay and the nightmares behind. Or so I thought. The asylum never truly let me go. The whispers followed me home, clinging to my clothes, permeating my apartment. I heard them in the silence of my bedroom, soft, insidious voices murmuring my name. He stayed. My sleep, already fractured, became a descent into pure horror. I dreamt of endless, echoing corridors, of moans that stretched into eternity, of the woman with the milky white eyes, her face pressed against a cold, padded wall, rocking, always rocking. And in the corner of her cell, another figure, gaunt and skeletal, its red eyes glowing in the darkness. I started seeing them during the day too, not clear, defined figures, but fleeting glimpses, movements in my peripheral vision. a shadow that lingered too long, a face that materialized in a crowded street for a split second, only to vanish. I knew they were the patients, the ones Silas said never left. They were reaching out, trying to pull me back into their eternal torment. I became a recluse, afraid to leave my apartment. Every knock on the door, every ringing phone sent me into a panic. I was constantly checking the locks, boarding up windows, trying to create a sanctuary, but I knew it was useless. They were already inside my mind. One night, the whispers became louder, clearer. I heard distinct voices, arguing, pleading, screaming. It sounded like the entire asylum had converged in my living room. I huddled in a corner, my hands clamped over my ears, desperate to block them out. Then, a cold hand touched my shoulder. I froze, every muscle in my body locking up. The air around me grew heavy, saturated with that foul, sickly smell of decay and despair from Blackwood. I could feel a cold breath on the back of my neck. "You came back to us," a voice whispered directly into my ear, dry and raspy, the same voice I had heard behind the office door. "We knew you would." I squeezed my eyes shut, tears streaming down my face. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. "You're one of us now," another voice hissed, high-pitched and maniacal, like a woman laughing through tears. It was her, the woman from the padded cell. "You belong here." I felt a sharp, burning pain in my arm, like something digging into my flesh. I finally managed to open my eyes. The room was bathed in a faint, phosphorescent glow. Standing over me were two figures. The first, a gaunt man with an elongated, distorted face, his eyes glowing red, was holding my arm, his long skeletal fingers digging into my skin. And beside him, the woman from the padded cell, her milky white eyes fixed on me, a wide, predatory smile stretching across her face. Her head was tilted at an unnatural angle, and her matted hair hung down, partially obscuring the grisly marks on her temple where she had perpetually thumped against the wall. "We'll make you feel right at home," the man rasped, his grip tightening. The last thing I remember before the darkness claimed me completely was the woman's chilling giggle, echoing with the moans and screams of countless others. I don't know how long I was out. When I finally came to, I was lying on a cold, hard surface. The air was thick with dust and the pervasive smell of decay. I opened my eyes, and for a moment, I thought I was back in my apartment, dreaming. But the light, it was too dim, too sickly yellow, and the walls, I was in a padded cell. The torn, stained remnants of the padding surrounded me. The faint, phosphorescent glow illuminated the room. I tried to move, but my limbs felt heavy, unresponsive. I looked down at my hands. They were thin, skeletal, the skin stretched taut over the bones. My fingernails were long, yellowed, and encrusted with grime. I brought a hand up to my face. It felt different, hollowed out. Then I heard it, a faint rhythmic sound. Thump thump, thump thump. It was coming from me. My head was rocking back and forth, slowly, almost imperceptibly, hitting the wall behind me with each sway. The sound was my own skull striking the hard surface. I tried to stop, but I couldn't. My body moved independently of my will, compelled by an unseen force. A low moan escaped my throat. It was not a moan of pain, but of ancient, bottomless despair. It was the same moan I had heard in the asylum, the one that had drawn me deeper into its terrifying embrace. I tried to scream, but only a dry, rasping whisper emerged. "You stayed." And then, through the small, high window of my cell, I saw the moon, a pale, indifferent orb in the black sky, and in its ghostly light, I saw the silhouette of Blackwood Asylum, its broken windows like vacant eyes staring back at me. I never left. The patients never left. And now, I am one of them. Eternally rocking, eternally moaning, forever trapped within these decaying walls, waiting for the next curious soul to wander in, waiting for them to stay.